When you begin to look back in hindsight, trends then become apparent. You see that certain stories, the ones which at first appeared haphazard or sensational, were really part of a far greater game. And nowhere is this more apparent than with the life of Meghan Markle. Because if you chart her recent actions, the individuals she's subtly let go, the projects she's attempted to claim as her own, you notice something larger gestating. Let's be real, Meghan's always been a pro at performing. But creativity, originality, that's another matter. Consider her business endeavors, the so-called original concepts, such as her lifestyle brand with its jams, candles, and homemade treats. All about it, from the wrapping to the inspired lemons on the box, tastes borrowed. Adapted, rehashed. The Duchess of Reinterpretation. Meghan's the visionary, but the vision's always been designed elsewhere, because at her very essence, Meghan is who she's always been, an actress. A woman who recites lines that others have written and says them with a sense of conviction. Her initial success on Suits was not a breakout. It was a preview of her comfort zone, playing sleek, confident, camera-ready. The catch? When the script stops, improvisation is more difficult. And if you glance at what comes after her royal period, the trend is remarkable. Continual repackaging, continual attempts to construct something that is original, and then, without warning, she shows up. Paris, flash photography. The photographers yelling, not Duchess of Sussex, not your Royal Highness, simply Meghan Markle. The royal packaging is removed. This was Meghan, unadorned, alone in actress gear. But do not imagine that this sighting was a coincidence. It was intentional, pre-planned. The first move in what her team has been referring to, literally, as the plan. Let's create a scene. Fashion Week, Paris, the city of reinvention. And Meghan goes back into the fray, not as a duchess, not as a wife, but as a brand. A woman taking back her story. But with a twist. It's not just about clothes, or cameras, or couture. It's about revenge. See, Meghan's inner circle has been saying something interesting for months. That she's been drawn to none other than the iconic Greta Garbo. Yes, that Garbo, one of Hollywood's most mysterious icons. Beautiful, enigmatic, impenetrable, Garbo didn't act. She dictated her legend. Her MGM manager, Louis B. Mayer, saw something potent in her imperfect English and her introversion. She didn't have to speak. Her silence was her tool, and that is precisely the image Meghan's team appears to want to restore. The I want to be alone mystique. The woman who appears infrequently, but controls every lens when she does. A royal Hollywood hybrid, secluded, potent, endlessly speculated upon. Garbo mastered the art of selective absence. She would agree to attend a premiere, and then cancel at the last minute. The press would explode. Garbo doesn't turn up, and suddenly, she was even more famous for not being there. It was brilliant. And in a strange, modern way, Meghan seems to be studying the same playbook, because after all those months of silence, after that retreat into well-chosen privacy, she appears in Paris, knowing precisely what that does. It stokes curiosity. It sparks conversation. The same manner in which Garbo employed mystery, Meghan employs scarcity. But here's the question we have to ask. Is this genius or desperation? Is Meghan reinventing herself as a contemporary Garbo, a woman in command of her own legend? Or playing a character no longer suited, hanging on to glamour of a world that's already passed her by? Because for every perfectly timed appearance, there's a lingering truth behind the smile. Meghan's public persona has become her product. And when the audience stops believing in the performance, what's left? In this new revenge era, she's stepping back into the limelight with a carefully crafted script. But the danger of living your life like a screenplay is simple. Eventually, the audience starts to read between the lines. So as Meghan Markle rebrands, sounding the quiet of Greta Garbo in pursuit of the limelight of Paris, one thing is certain. Is this a return or the start of her most complex act to date? When Meghan Markle surprised everyone by turning up at Paris Fashion Week, it seemed, at least on the surface, like a textbook celebrity move. No official announcement, no red carpet introduction, just a surprise arrival calculated to make social media go crazy, steal headlines, and insert Meghan back into the middle of the fashion fray. And for an instant, it nearly succeeded. But here's the thing. It didn't produce the reaction she'd intended, for because in a world where headlines are filled with global icons and real royalty, the difference of former TV star turned duchess making an appearance in Paris just wasn't sufficient. She didn't capture those highly sought-after fashion magazine covers. The hype was half-hearted. Why? Because the world has migrated to bigger stories, more relevant characters. Meghan's meticulously planned moment was more of a whimper than a roar, but what went on behind the scenes paints a whole different calculated picture and a very much more contentious one. There were two key strands woven into Meghan's Paris comeback, and the first was chilling. You see, as soon as Meghan's car journey took her past the very same tragic location where Princess Diana died. The backlash was immediate and vicious. To even hint at that holy, devastating space was always going to be risky. Predictable even, but Meghan's team did what they always do. They deflected. Blamed the press, specifically the Daily Mail, for suggesting the connection. They positioned themselves as victims, denying any deliberate symbolism, any disrespect. But let's not pretend. Instagram captions don't upload themselves. Paths don't wrote themselves. Every step is deliberate when you live under the camera flash. And here's the thing, the public naturally sensed. It was distasteful. Whether intentional or not, it seemed like an emotional manipulation. A holy tragedy reduced to set dressing. Meghan made a choice. She didn't have to go that way, metaphorically or literally. And that decision had a bitter aftertaste. A step intended to create mystique instead raised questions and reopened wounds. But now let's examine the second strand of this narrative, the one that, superficially at least, was more glamorous. Meghan hugged by none other than Anna Wintour. Yes, that once inaccessible high priestess of Vogue, now smiling alongside Meghan, as if nothing between them had ever gone wrong. Why is that significant? Because it wasn't an accident. Rumors of a rift between Meghan and Wintour had gone round fashion and media circles for years. And now, out of nowhere, they're side by side. That wasn't friendship. That was strategy. And business for Anna, make no mistake. Anna Wintour is in transition. Vogue, once the last word in international fashion, is fighting to catch up with Gen Z TikTok influencers and the shifting currents of online power. For Wintour, being photographed with Meghan, even provokingly, places her name back in circulation. It makes her relevant once more, particularly to American tabloid cycles. Meghan's controversies can blaze intensely, but Wintour understands. Heat sells publications. But Meghan? She perceived that hug as a golden ticket. Sources familiar with her team indicate that she's already shopping a comeback podcast, with Anna as guest star. A Christmas special, if you can believe it. It's a change, and deliberate change, of course, from the failed lifestyle branding of jam jars and curated wine to something with fashion cachet, business heft, and glossy editorial appeal. All of a sudden, Meghan's not the girl hiding behind the handmade jam tag anymore. She's too occupied for that these days. She's a designer, or so the new script goes. As if somewhere in the background, she's sitting at a Singer sewing machine at 2 a.m., drawing silhouettes and sewing couture. We're being told she's always loved designing clothes, just like we were informed that she's always loved making jam. Convenient, isn't it? But again, it's all about managing the narrative. One day she's styling snug domesticity. The next, she's fashion-forward and ferocious. And what's more viral than a Duchess-turned-designer-turned-podcast host? And what about Anna? She understands the strength of being on the wrong side of right. Meghan is not everyone's favorite, but she is news. Every mistake she makes earns clicks, and clicks are money in today's economy. That's the hard reality. Even the criticism gets paid for. But the most tellingly layered of all, Harry, because even when Meghan drove, by the scene of Diana's death, facing public outrage, Harry allegedly accepted her excuse. Tearful, emotional, that she had no idea. That it was merely the magic of Paris carrying her away. That she didn't mean to cause harm. And Harry, still in mourning, still a protector, bought it. Of course he did, because at the center of this tale is a man who lost his mother, who wed a woman who has an understanding of playing to the emotions, and who continues to be asked to decide between past and present. And each time he chooses Meghan. Even when the whispers of Diana are loud enough to rattle a city, that's the genuine drama here. Not the botched fashion stunt. Not the cringe-inducing hug with Anna Wintour, but the emotional tightrope that Harry must navigate every day, standing by a wife whose actions continue to echo a trauma he never left behind. Is Meghan Markle creating a brand, or rewriting history in the moment? Is it Fashion Week or drama? And how many times can you reinvent your identity before the crowd exits? In the next section, we'll break down the podcast strategy in full. Why Meghan's team believes audio is still her redemption path, what role fashion elites like Wintour are expected to play, and how this ties into her rumored Netflix revival. Stay tuned, because with Meghan, what happens in Paris never stays in Paris. And who can blame him? Here's a man who was raised in a world that always insisted on perfection, but provided very little emotional security. Remove the titles, the suits, the scripted interviews, and what remains is a man still mourning his mother, still yearning for unconditional love, and maybe still hoping for someone who won't walk away. At heart, Harry is that guy. Kind, emotional, sometimes too trusting. But here's the problem. Emotional neediness becomes exhausting, especially when it collides with someone who knows how to use that longing to steer the narrative. Meghan? She shows up when it suits her, offers love when it serves her storyline. And that's where the cracks are beginning to show. Behind the royal grins and Spotify deals, there's a reality that's difficult to deny. Harry is the emotional doormat in this union. He's the one who's sending cars, organizing, holding up the act when it's her turn to perform. And when she does talk about him publicly, it's with the sort of admiration that sounds performative. He's handsome, he's smart, he's a fox. But look closer, and the substance evaporates, because when Harry requires support, genuine support, where is she? Consider the Invictus Games or the Sent a Ball charity, which Harry cared so deeply about. When those initiatives started to fall apart, where was Meghan's public backing? Not a peep. No Instagram endorsement. No loving post about how proud she is of him. Nothing. Why? Because it wasn't about her. And if it doesn't involve Meghan, it doesn't get coverage. But still, Harry trusts her. He always does. Particularly when she weaves the story with tears, with timing, with just enough vulnerability to cushion the hit. As when they drove by that ghostly place in Paris, the tunnel where Diana died, and she said she was innocent. That it was merely a route, merely a happy coincidence, merely the land of love. Harry, of course, believed it, weptily even. And while he holds on to the version of Meghan he wishes to believe in, she is playing a game on a different board altogether. One that's all about power, brand takeover, and revenge. Let's talk about Prince William's Apple TV special. Quietly released, deeply personal, and widely praised. Meghan saw it coming. She knew it would land well. So what did she do? She tried to sabotage the spotlight, to flood the timeline, to drown out the praise. That surprise appearance in Paris? It wasn't fashion, it was strategy. A counter-programming move? The message. Don't forget me. I'm still here. Watch me instead, but it didn't work. Because viewers opted for the Prince of Wales. Peaceful, measured, genuine. Meghan's media moment couldn't compete with authenticity, and then came the real punch in the gut. Netflix signed Victoria Beckham. That deal came crashing down on Meghan like a brick wall. Insiders report she was shocked, enraged, totally blindsided. She couldn't believe Netflix, her Netflix, would go out of its way to support her most powerful enemy. Not only a fashion legend, but also someone adored, likable, and free of controversy. The meltdown, according to reports, was apocalyptic. And yes, it went directly to Ted Sarandos. Allegedly, he tried to soothe her ego. Told her, "You're still our number one, our diva." But the numbers tell a colder truth. Victoria Beckham's docuseries was a hit. Meghan's content? Not so much. Netflix is getting sick of it. Of the demands. Of the drama. Of the diva antics. Meghan won't market. Doesn't hustle. Wants red carpet residuals without traipsing the carpet. And behind the scenes, the studio is stealthily shifting. Selecting stars who labor, who deliver, who really sell product. Worse for Meghan, however, some of the same producers who were involved in the Harry and Meghan documentary are now signed on to the Beckham shows. That's not rejection. That's a shot right between the eyes. And in classic Meghan style, rather than learning to bend, she's creating an entire new fantasy. Forget jam jars. Forget recipe books. Meghan is a style mogul now. The next Netflix special won't be recipes or neighborhoods. It'll be about what she wears. The wardrobe is the star. The stitching is the narrative. This isn't food. It's fashion as power. Her team, yes, the same ones responsible for the twerking video, are putting all their chips in on wardrobe collaborations. If she gets the looks right, if the Instagram hype grows, if luxury brands bite, then they think Meghan can finally conquer the fashion world. Labels will knock. Merchandise will fly off the shelves. And voila, the Duchess will be regarded as a fashion legend, not a royal failure. It's not about Christmas. It's not about carols. It's not even about content. It's about clothes. And Meghan is aware of this. That's why all of the following from now until her special airs will be carefully controlled. Instagram leaks of her go-to looks, staged photos of her trying on gowns, designer labels strategically visible, glam behind-the-scenes reveals, all building up to that one pivotal moment, the reveal of the outfit that can make or break her next performance. But there's something Meghan's team won't discuss. Sales. Recall the Bloomberg Originals interview? Meghan wouldn't give numbers, wouldn't discuss data. Why? Because the reality hurts. The products didn't sell. Not to the degree they should have, not with the gratis press ramp she got. And no matter how much Ted Sarandos may be willing to big them up in private, Netflix execs glance at metrics, not feelings. So as we enter this Netflix holiday special, watch the fabrics, not the grub. The clothing is the currency. The brands are the battlefield. Meghan does not need to be applauded. She needs to convert. And if the ensembles crash, if the brands don't take the bait, then 2026 will not be a fashion coup. It'll be a reckoning, because behind the soft focus and scripted glamour is a harder reality. The world isn't buying Meghan Markle at face value anymore. And now, every appearance, every seam, every smile is a test.